Good Friday morning. My name is Jerry Millard. Welcome to Real Talk. We are live on the I Love CVille Network in Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world. Today's guest, a fantastic one yet again. Lisa Sturtevant, our guest, Dr. Lisa Sturtevant. She's the Chief Economist for the Virginia Realtors Association. She's going to join us in about 35 seconds here on Real Talk, powered by the Yes Team Realtors. Before we welcome Lisa to the program, we'll welcome Keith Smith of the Yes Team Realtors. My friend, good morning.
Good morning. Again, I apologize to everybody for the technical delay on this, but frankly, this was on my end, so those who know me will not be too surprised by that. So I'm almost 60. I'm still trying to figure this stuff out, but we're working it out. So I'm super excited about inviting the good doctor on, and I've got a stack of stuff here, so I'm ready to go.
Okay, fantastic. Judah Wickower, are you ready to welcome Lisa to the show? I'm getting the thumbs up from our director and our production team. Lisa, you are live here on Real Talk. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, first, we're very grateful for your most precious commodity, your time. Thank you kindly for joining us. Before we get into it, introduce yourself to the viewing public, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for the chance to come on this morning. I only wish I could be there in person. I love being in Charlottesville. I am Chief Economist with the Virginia Realtors. Been working in that capacity for about a year, a little over a year. But really been looking at issues related to the economy and the housing market for the last 20 years. So I'm really happy to be here.
All right, how about this? And then I'm going to pass it over to the star of the show, Keith Smith. A snapshot into the personal life here. Every single day, I'm a small business owner. Keith's a small business owner. You're an economist. Every single day, a different day in this COVID-19 landscape. Just you personally, snapshot into your life over the last 45 days or so.
Oh, into my personal life over the last 45 days.
It's been crazy, right?
Well, I have a 5-year-old, and so being home with the kids has added challenges. But it's actually been really interesting to have a chance to do more of this remote connecting with folks over the last 45 days. Keith, I'm with you. I'm learning this technology myself, so that's been the upside of being at home.
All right, let's get into it. Keith Smith, fire away, my friend.
Hey, Lisa, good to see you.
Hey, Keith, how are you?
Normally, I have a mustache taped on here, but for some reason will not stay on, so we have to work on trying to sew it. So hey, thank you so much for being here, and again, I apologize for the technical hiccups. And one of the things about these masks is your glasses fog up on it. But so thank you so much. I've been excited about this interviews all week. I've got all this paperwork here, and I'm just excited to get into this. But I think I'm going to start at a really high level, right? A really high macro level. And some of the questions that I've been receiving from clients is, what is the shape of this recession going to look like, right? Is it going to be a V, right? Is it going to be a U, right? This sounds like a cheer thing, right? Is it going to be a U, right? Is it going to be?
It could be a W.
It could be a W.
It could be an L.
So I'd like to take a couple of minutes and just explain that. One of the things we try to do on this show is try to explain things in an approachable manner, right? So I have an opinion of it. I'd just love to hear what yours is. Sure.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really good place to start. And, one thing we need to keep in mind is as we went into this recession, the economy, the housing market really were as strong as they had ever been, right? We had strong job growth, strong wage growth. The market in Virginia overall, as well as particularly in Charlottesville, was doing really well. That's a good thing as we went into this sort of unprecedented recession. And this is a recession very different than anything we've ever seen, and particularly different than the last downturn, as you well know. This is a recession that's being driven by a health crisis. And so the recovery period really has so much to do with how fast we can get a handle on the public health crisis. So from the economic standpoint, the job losses are going to be deep. We've already seen that. We have over 400,000 Virginians that have applied for unemployment benefits since February, and we expect those numbers to rise. We expect businesses to have to cut jobs here in the short term. But those demand factors that were in place back in January and February, those will return and will help sort of buoy the economy here in Virginia as well as the housing market, hopefully in Q3 and Q4. So I think we had originally thought it might look like a V, but I think there is more indication that we're looking a little bit at a U with a potential blip maybe not a W, but maybe a little W blip in the fall as we figure out how to get ready for dealing with another incident of coronavirus, which we likely will have to deal with in the fall.
So I'm going to let Jerry ask you a quick question because I need to talk to the director for a second. So if you wouldn't mind, if you could just follow up on that.
And we have a lot of questions coming in right now from realtors across Virginia. Guys, we'll get to these questions from the agents. Fall, we have a lot of realtors on the program, a lot of agents hoping for the spring market and the start of Q3 and the fall season.
Yeah.
Is that realistic?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think there's reasons to think that's realistic. I think we have a lot of information we're still trying to, wait to find out, but it seems to be that this spring market that we're missing here in March and we will miss in April and we probably will miss a little bit in May is really something that will be pushed to later in the year. And whether that's Q3 or Q4, I think that remains to be seen and how fast we can recover on the jobs front.
So the reason I had to jump away, I just wanted to make sure Judah had a slide that I wanted to show up. So there's a slide that popped up, and I agree with you. I think this is more like a U than it's going to be a V. I think a V was a little optimistic at the time. I just recently read something about Goldman Sachs was predicting a third and fourth quarter. So I think this U, is going to pop back up on the back end of it. I've been around the block, been in this business since '87, so I've kind of seen a few ups and downs. I'm not a doctor of economics, so I'm just telling you how I feel and what we see out there. This feels more like the recession after 2001, after 9/11. There was that kind of U thing. It came back up pretty quickly. And if I've got my stats right, the home prices jumped up in 2001, roughly 6%, somewhere in that range, based on the data that I have. Are you seeing demand and pricing going to spike in the third quarter?
I don't see. I see that pent up, that demand that we had in January, February. I see that still being there in September, October, November. I don't think I would predict a spike in prices, but there's certainly no evidence of a drop. And I think that's what a lot of people have been concerned with. They remember the 2008 downturn and they remember those dramatic price drops. But as you know, the fundamentals are just entirely different now. The strong price growth we've been seeing in Virginia and in Charlottesville has been driven by fundamentals, by strong demand, low supply, whereas back in 2008, we had a lot of very loose lending requirements. We had a lot of subprime loans that were driving up the prices. So while we might see overall 2020 sales transactions lower, and for the next month, we're actually thinking transactions in April are going to be about 30% lower than last April, just based on our pending sales data. So we might see overall 2020 transactions a little lower, but there's no evidence to suggest any major price impacts, at least at this point.
So I follow Dr. Yoon's writings pretty closely, as you do, I'm sure, and I tend to agree with him. And I'm going to make it a little bit more, in my vernacular. But prior to 2008, this cup of coffee could have bought $1 million house, right? The lending, I'm exaggerating, of course.
Sure.
But the lending the requirements were so much looser than they are now.
Absolutely.
And, it is still, as it should be, a process to get a loan and move forward. And the other thing that I agreed with the good doctor is the inventory of new construction, right? So prior to 2008, there was roughly 2 million units a year built. Pretty much in the last 10 years, and you may have a better stat than I do, it's somewhere around 1 million plus or minus 100,000 units. So the demand is just pent up. But a lot of folks other than realtors watch this show, right? Other than the space. And, we not to make you nervous, but it's about 250,000 people. So
we have questions coming from Richmond, Virginia for you here on the feed.
But so somebody who's not in our space, somebody who's not working in this environment, somebody, there's a ton of people we speak to every day, just for very good reasons, flat out frightened. And they're thinking exactly as you said. This is going to be a repeat of this long projected downturn. Is there anything you can share to help those folks ease their minds? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's the things we just mentioned, that this is very different. I think the things that we're looking for here in Virginia to know that we're kind of on the turnaround and when things will be back to normal are really, there's 5 things that I'm looking at. I'll mention them really quickly. We can talk more about them if we want, but when COVID-19 cases slow down, when the stay-at-home directive is lifted, that's 2. When the mortgage industry stabilizes, that's 3. When we have the military stop movement order lifted. And then finally, when we see furloughed workers being called back to work. We have a lot of folks who are furloughed, not laid off. And that's a different environment than a typical sort of economic downturn. So I think there are signs we can be looking for that will tell that this is very different than last time.
This question coming in from Long and Foster on Strawberry Street in Richmond, Virginia. You mentioned that there's over 400,000 Virginians on the unemployment line. We see Inman reporting sub 3.0 mortgage rates potentially on the horizon, but there's a lot of people out of work or, as you said, furloughed. And the question is, when we come out of this, are you going to see the type of inventory that is moving change? Will it be more multifamily and less single family? Interesting question.
That is an interesting question. I think that we're going to end up seeing a lot of what we had before. And we have so many things that drive the market, and we're talking a lot about the economy today, but demographics, right, is the primary driver of the buyer side as well as the seller side. And so what we've had is a significant demand from folks in their 30s, first-time buyers, first-time move-up buyers. And the supply side has really been driven by boomers, right, with the larger homes. And that supply is really going to be what's available. And the question becomes, are we going to face the same issues we faced before, where boomers living in single-family homes maybe aren't putting them on the market because there is no place for them to move, or they don't see an option and they're staying in their homes longer? I think those demographic-driven fundamentals we saw, I think that's what we're going to see when we come out of this. I don't foresee anything drastically different in the character of the inventory that will be available for sale.
Another question's come in. In fact, a number of them have. I'm going to ask the question, pass it back to you, sure. Keith. This is coming from a mortgage broker that's watching in Crozet, Virginia. Jerry, can you ask your guest the impact of students not returning to grounds in Charlottesville at UVA will have on the housing market in Charlottesville and around Central Virginia? Good question.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We're actually talking with folks in Harrisonburg about the same issue. And I think there is some concern among property managers and individual landlords about where the demand for that rental housing is going to come from. I haven't heard about the sort of final say on whether university campuses will be open in September. And the anecdotal data I'm getting is that landlords and property managers are seeing people sign those leases for September, assuming that campuses will be open as usual. But again, as with all of this stuff, it's kind of every day, as Jerry, as you mentioned, Keith, as you mentioned, every day there's new information that's coming out. And so I think that's one of the issues here as the end of the spring semester comes to be. We'll know more about what will happen in the 2020-2021 academic year.
So to jump in on the student question, I've actually reached out to a few contacts that I have high level at the executive level at UVA to answer that question for us. And,
Great.
And next Friday, I hopefully we'll have some answers for that end of it.
Great.
They are clearly trying to assess this. I don't know if my wife is watching, but my wife is European, right? She's Austrian, and we track the European news. And we saw something pretty interesting this morning, that they are actually in Austria beginning to slow roll open the school systems again. So in Europe, at least in Austria, for that example, they're starting to slow roll this. So one of the things that I've been trying to explain, what I think this reopening or this re-entry is going to look like, it's going to be more like kind of like a NASCAR race where there's a pace car and we're going to go around a little bit in this pace car, which is the local governments and so forth and so on, kind of keeping us at a certain pace, and then eventually that pace car will drop and then we'll hopefully get into a full. I mean, does that analogy make sense to you as an economist?
Well, I think kind of talking about a couple different things. I mean, I think there's the public health side, and I think that that's really important. I think it's been really interesting. You mentioned Austria. I know that Italy, which was also one of the hardest hit countries in Europe, is planning to reopen a lot of its businesses and schools on May 1. And they were ahead of us, right? So their epidemic was started earlier. And so I think what is smart, to your point, is to watch how these rollouts are happening in other places. The United States provides a really interesting example, right? Because each state seems to be doing things a little bit differently. And so while Georgia may be planning to reopen businesses next week, that is not as important, at least to our market, as to what the governor of Virginia decides to do in terms of his stay-at-home directive and his directives to the local governments and businesses.
So Jerry mentioned an Inman report, which I read yesterday, and the Fannie Mae is forecasting 2021 mortgage rates under 3%. Is that something you agree with?
So here's my thinking on that. We used to be able to do a pretty good job at predicting what mortgage rates would be, right? We could look at the 10-year Treasury note. We could look at some of the other factors that drive mortgage rates. But those relationships are just really out of whack right now, right? And so we knew back in March, even when the 30-year mortgage rate fell in the second week of March, it was really hard to find a lender who could offer that rate, right? Because there's a lot of other factors that are at play. The liquidity in the mortgage market is really low right now. And so there are all sorts of new restrictions being put on lenders from the folks buying those mortgages, right? And so even if the published rate is under 3, it may still be challenging to be able to secure a loan at that rate. And I think we're going to find as we come out of this that those lending criteria are going to be a little tighter. So someone who I heard estimates that between 3 and 7% of folks who qualified for a loan back in February wouldn't meet the standards that are now currently in the marketplace because of this increased volatility in the mortgage market and the desire on the part of the purchasers of these mortgage-backed securities of having a higher standard loan.
So I'm so glad you brought that up. So on Tuesday, we're going to bring in some mortgage brokers who are literally going to talk about that. And that's literally what we're hearing from clients and processing loans. So in a way, I think that's a good thing. It'll my biggest fear, frankly, is a repeat of the foreclosure crisis, right? Mm-hmm. And to hear that the regulatory side of things are really in control of this, which is great news. Plus, I think we're in a much different place than we were, obviously, as you said, in 2008.
Yeah, and that foreclosure issue, just because you mentioned it, again, we are not going to have that same foreclosure issue we had. There are all sorts of things, as you alluded to, being put into place now to keep those foreclosures from coming to the market.
So that's an important note to re-emphasize on it, because again, like I said, not just general real estate agents and so forth and so on are watching this, but regular, everyday other folks that they've lost their job, they're worried about getting foreclosed on, and if they have federally backed loans, there's deferments for a year. If they have a conventional loan, I believe it's 90 days, if I remember my stats right. But one of the things we really wanted to do today, and I know we're running up against your time, and again, this is my apologies we're doing great on the technology side, but what I pushed out this morning is I'm hoping we've got a bunch of questions.
We do.
So I'm going to turn it back over to Jerry, and let's see what we can do while we wrap up.
All right, so here's a couple questions that are coming in here. This question is coming in from Realtors in Northern Virginia. Are we going to expect this question's a good one. When the economy starts clicking again and home sales start moving again, which price points are you going to see as catching fire? So here in our local market, we saw that starter home and we saw that 3 to 5 price point really catch fire and really push and move the market. We saw, like a lot of markets across the country, we saw a little stagnation with that 800K plus, 1 million plus. What are you seeing here? And here's an interesting question. I'm going to add a piece of it to myself. If we have 400,000 Virginians at the unemployment line and thousands more that are furloughed and not fully employed and earning their full income potential, are we truly going to see this starter home or the step above starter home catch fire when we get out of it, when a lot of folks that are interested in that demographic may not have the money to do so? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so let me say two things on that. So the first on the job losses, one thing that's really important to note is that job losses here in Virginia and really across the country haven't been spread evenly. So we know that the vast majority of job losses to date have been in the restaurant, bar, accommodation, food services, and entertainment segments. For a variety of reasons, because of age, of the worker, because of a lot of other factors, folks working in those sectors tend to be less likely to be homeowners in general, right, than folks working in the government sector or in the professional services sector. So what I'm trying to get at is the segment of the market most impacted right now by the economic downturn are your renters right now. Now, we know that the unemployment is hitting other industries, but to that question about Northern Virginia, there's going to be a lot of resiliency in that professional services sector and, of course, in the government sector. And so that demand from those first-time buyers, I think, is going to be still very strong going forward. The challenge is going to be the inventory. I mean, that's what the challenge has been in places like Charlottesville and in Northern Virginia for so long. I think that first-time buyer, that first-time move-up buyer is going to be where the strength of the market is. To your point, I think we're going to see continued softening in the luxury market for the primary reason that for many people buying in that high price point, their stock holdings are really a source of that down payment or a source of that funding to get into that high-end home. And it's going to take a while for some of those losses in the stock market to be recouped. I think the other market, and this doesn't affect Northern Virginia, but maybe Charlottesville to a little bit more extent, is we're seeing a softening on the second home market, right? It's now a sort of that discretionary second home purchase. And the markets on the coasts, I know, are seeing people who are trying to sell those second homes. So we might see a little bit of an inventory of second homes because the demand is really going to be a little bit weaker, I think, even as we recover.
You have entrepreneurs watching in Hampton Roads, also in Richmond, here in Charlottesville. I fall into this category. This is a question on the thread. I'm going to paraphrase it just to streamline it. Investors, people that are counting on rent to pay mortgages, people are counting on rent to build a career. 20,000 square feet myself in our portfolio, 24 tenants. Can we expect rents to maintain their integrity from a price point standpoint from past history? Are we going to see some deflation here? Where are you seeing rents go?
Are you talking commercial rents or
if we
residential
could go both.
rents?
Can we go both?
Okay. Yeah, so yesterday I did a Facebook Live on the rental market and on property managers and landlords here in the Commonwealth. We saw about a third of our property managers and landlords say they have tenants who didn't pay rent in April. They just weren't able to pay rent. And while the majority are trying to work out payment plans, it's been hard for some of these property managers. The sort of the bad news for property managers at this point is that there have been some additional, there's been some additional legislation put into place that really is a big support and a big help to those renters, who I mentioned are the hardest hit by the economic downturn. But it will mean that rent payments are at risk here in the next couple of months. And we at the Virginia Realtors have been working with the governor's office to try and figure out ways to make sure that assistance is coming not just to tenants, but also to those property managers and property owners for whom that rent is the way in which they pay the mortgage on that rental property.
So any traction with the governor on that?
Yeah, so the governor last week sent a petition to the federal government asking for additional federal resources for the COVID-19 response. And among that ask was $250 million for rent assistance that would be targeted to folks at below about the median income, and those rent payments would go directly to the property manager or landlord instead of passing through the tenant. So we're trying to make sure that we stay in that conversation, and when we have more information, we will surely let you know.
So I'm going to pivot a little bit. I've been asked these questions from fellow real estate agents and basically everybody. You know, has this just changed the way we all do business, the way we all communicate? Are you seeing that as technology, even though I struggle with it, has changed how we're going to do business? Does that make any sense to you?
I can't, I shouldn't use a double negative. It seems very likely that a real estate professional who wants to be in a great position to take advantage of the recovery at the end of the year will be using technology when we come out of this. And I say that because we know that people are using this technology, and many people are feeling very comfortable purchasing a home or renting a home using virtual technology. And so you want to make sure that you're still there to capture that side of things. I think secondly, we're also, and I mentioned this before, and I don't want to make too big a deal out of this, but it is likely that we will be dealing with the coronavirus again in the fall and in the winter. And so we need to be, if we are ready for that though, I think that it could be a very smooth transition for the real estate industry to just move back into more virtual transactions. And then the last thing I will say though is I don't think this is a wholesale change. I think that there is always going to be the desire for the in-person communication and that value that a personal realtor brings. We've seen actually some of the iBuying firms, close their doors in this pandemic because they can't operate because they don't have the relationships that are so important that realtors are building with their clients.
We talk about this on the show all the time. It's all about personal connection, relationships, and trusted advisors. This is a great tool to kind of search and all that stuff, but we have found out in the last 3 or 4 weeks, this is actually can be used as a phone, right? And you can actually have a conversation with clients and folks, and you can do this virtual thing. So I know Jerry has a couple more questions coming in, but before I do that, looks like Congress and the President is going to sign a second version of the CARES Act. I was very interested to see that a couple things are coming out here. $2.25 billion is going to go for corona testing, which I think is huge. And then as a university town, $75 billion is going to go to help hospitals. We heard the other day that the university is losing about $80 billion, the hospital, that is.
80 million a month.
Yeah.
Million, I apologize.
80 million a month.
I apologize.
Yeah.
It's a mask.
Yeah.
$80 million
Yeah.
a month. So that's great help to keep our real troopers on this, the real people that are fighting for us every day in masks and moving forward. So I'll let this wrap up with Jerry. Thank you so much for everything.
And we're up against the gun here. We're not going to take a ton more time here, just rapid fire so we can try to cover as many of these questions as possible. Advice and perspective that you can offer, Lisa, to the developers and the builders that are watching the program here. We have a lot of them.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So I don't know as much about this side of the market as I should and I want to. What I do know, though, is that it's been really challenging at the local level for builders and developers to move forward with projects when local government permit offices are closed, when the process for approving site plan and other project approvals have been slowed down. So I think we are going to see a little pause on new home construction and on residential and commercial construction generally. Local governments, though, are looking for ways to be more innovative to get those permits done online so that construction can move forward. The other key now is that the folks working on those construction sites are still under the same order of social distancing, and so taking very good care to make sure that those orders are being met so that the governor doesn't come out and say that he wants to shut down construction altogether.
And I think, and I'm going to throw this could be a good topic. I think she's exactly right. And when we come out of this, existing construction is going to catch fire because of the delay that's happening with new construction.
Yeah.
And we're really going to see existing homes sell well. One more, and I'll pass it to Keith. Macro question. You're a leader in the Commonwealth here. What would you like to see from the governor's office?
Great question.
Well, that's a good question. That's a hard question. I wouldn't want to be making the decisions that he has to make. I don't think, I think that there's, I think he's been hearing lots of praise and also lots of criticism for, it's a tough spot to be in. And so I think that, continuing to balance public health with the economy is going to be front of mind. And I will give the administration the credit that the Virginia Realtors would like to give of really kind of listening to the concerns from the real estate community and being involved in that. We're going to be actually talking with Senator Mark Warner on Monday, the Virginia Realtors are, to make sure that, again, the issues of the real estate industry in Virginia are being heard by those at the highest levels of government.
All right, you have one?
I just want to add to
She's been great.
Oh, yes, to the local government question and the permitting question. So I chair the Regional Housing Partnership, which we have all the local elected officials on, and I can share that they are rapidly trying to figure out how to do this virtually. Frankly, the private sector kind of moves a little faster than the public sector, but they're trying to do that. I know Charlottesville's trying to do it. I can tell you, Albemarle County, Fulvana, Nelson, and Greene, you actually can still submit applications for rezonings, permits, and all this kind of great stuff. It takes a little bit longer. The process is a little bit laborious. Charlottesville's trying to figure out how they can technically do that. So the good news is that they're trying to get there. So this doesn't stop that end of the sector of the business. So I know you have an 11 o'clock, and it, according to my fancy iPhone, it is 10:55. Any other last questions before?
No, I mean, we have so many to get to. We got to do a part 2. You're awesome, Lisa. The realtors have really responded to you so far.
So you're always welcome back. And again, I apologize for the technical snafu on the front end. You were trying to tell me yesterday that we needed to do this, and believe it or not, I didn't listen. Who knew?
Well, and just to put in a quick plug too, I get to do my own Facebook Live every Thursday, 4 o'clock. So again, on the Virginia Realtors website, please. I know everyone's at home, and so if you're looking for another Facebook Live to kind of engage with, please come and hang out with us on Thursdays at 4.
Great segue, because I was going to end on that. We're going to post your live feed on our live feed, so I think that works that way. But
that's how it works.
We'll find out.
Yeah,
sounds right.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
You have a good one. She's fantastic, guys. She absolutely offered a lot of insight into what's transpiring. What quickly here, what really did you pull from that? I pulled a lot from that.
Well, first of all, we talk about this all the time about bringing a rock star on.
Oh, yeah.
And I've known Lisa for quite some time. She's spoken at our events for the Regional Housing Partnership. And, I just wanted her to get this dynamic conversation started, that this too shall pass. This has been our theme for the last 30 days. And, this may not be a V like everybody hoped, but there is a recovery on the other end of this, and we've been talking about this consistently. This is the time to be kind to one another, and we shall too get through this. I've made a note. So she mentioned the West Coast. Our youngest daughter, as you know, lives in Seattle, and I had a conversation with her yesterday that interest rates out there are pretty much knocking on 3%, and I said, hey, maybe this is time for us to look at buying something. And we did a quick search out there, and there's nothing to buy.
Yeah.
So it's just this inventory thing, I think, is, and I'm not a doctor of economics, right? I just do it every day.
Yeah.
This inventory.
A lot of economics is intuitive for businessmen, but go on. I don't mean to interrupt you there.
Yeah. No. It's good when somebody such as the good doctor can verify what we actually see every day on the street.
Sure.
What did you take away from it?
I took away this, and I think when this comes back, I think there's pent-up demand. I think I'm going to just take my personal household, and I was thinking about this on the way here. My personal household, ACAC membership for a family, that's on pause.
Yeah.
We love to go out to restaurants. That's on pause. We love to go out to breweries and wineries. That's on pause. Whether or not we get this money from the government, people are getting it in various times. The $1,200 a person, whether depending on income level, we're just talking in broad strokes.
Sure.
We don't get the full amount, but we do get something. So that's more income coming in for a kid, a wife, and a husband.
Sure.
I think a lot of the American public, not all of it, but a lot of it, in the last 45 days to 60 days has been able to potentially save some money. I'm not saying that's going to be it for a long period of time, but over the last 60 days. And what I really took from it, if I owned a home in Charlottesville and Central Virginia, now I just sold mine and bought a new one. But I think old construction, existing homes, not new construction when we get out of this, is going to go gangbusters.
So it's funny you should say that. Yonna and I did the very same analysis. We're a little bit different. We don't have a small one at the house, right?
Uh-huh.
So we go out, we do takeout, frankly, almost every evening. But our household budget has a little bit more capital in it than it had beforehand to it.
We're not spending as much, unfortunately, for the economy.
Yeah, and frankly, it's not good for the economy. That's how our economy kind of functions.
Right.
And
People like us and our wives going out.
Sure. But I don't want to discourage that. People should go out and do that. There's some awesome restaurant folks out. We're going to try to give away a couple of Marie Bet cards. I totally, love Marie Bet, love the guys over there. They're just great community leaders as well as businessmen. But go out there. I picked up these cards this morning. There was people in the downtown Marie Bet. They have, they're not allowed any more than 6 folks in, and they have all the distances. And I will say we're buying a lot more bread from Marie Bet than we normally buy. So I've pivoted from coffee to bread.
I love that. Marie Bet, one of the fabulous sponsors of this program. Another thing I'm watching closely as an investor, as an entrepreneur that tries to stay ahead of the market, if we have roughly, and the good doctor, Lisa Sturtevant, the chief economist for the Virginia Realtors said this, 400,000 Virginians on the unemployment line. Worth repeating, 400,000 Virginians on the unemployment line. A lot of those Virginians on the unemployment line from the restaurant category, food and beverage, events, tourism. We know that. She made the point that the folks that are on the unemployment line are oftentimes the folks that are renting.
Yeah.
So I'm curious twofold, how this is going to impact the rental market, residential, and the second thing, especially if UVA students don't come back in the fall. Okay, and the second thing I'm watching is those are the folks that are buying up into starter homes. And if folks that are buying up into starter homes go months without having a job and have had to burn through the little savings that they had, the starter home category may be a little sluggish to start.
Yeah, so I am so glad that Lisa tackled this rental question, and they're communicating with the governor on that and trying to get some relief for the rental component of it. And you hit spot on, right? That's how this migrates up. Again, Yonna and I are very fortunate, but we've been busy with folks currently moving from the rental out. And there's a big difference between furlough and unemployment.
Oh, sure.
Right?
In some ways, furlough may be even worse. In some ways.
Correct.
Because you could be getting less money.
Well, and then what we're seeing now with this new PPP money coming in, there are starting to come back some of the business owners that I know they're hiring some skeletal crews to come back and so forth and so on. So I think as I try to explain this is going to be this NASCAR thing, right? And this is going to go around and around and nice and slow. But I was not excited, but I was glad to see that the good doctor's vision of a U matches mine. I think a V is an unrealistic.
Oh yeah, V's passed.
Yeah, well, I think we passed that about 2 weeks ago.
V's long gone.
Yeah.
I'm curious of your take on this. It is a buyer's market. And I've been emphasizing this on the I Love CVille show. Sure. I'm seeing the DOMs rise on a lot of properties on the market right now. It is undoubtedly a buyer's market, and I'm trying to encourage activity and for people to jump in the deep end. Guys, here's an opportunity potentially to get 10 to 15% in savings off 60 days ago.
Well, I would agree with you, and then I would disagree with you.
Okay, I'm curious.
So the question we get asked all the time as real estate agents, is now the time to buy? And the answer is yes. If you're
always time to buy.
Well, if you're comfortable, if your life circumstances says you need to do it, there's protections in place that we can move. Everybody's doing transactions, and we've created the systems to do that. But I will tell you, about a week or 2 weeks ago, the traffic, let's call it, in the city was kind of sluggish. We had a couple of contracts over the weekend that we couldn't make happen because our seller could not go $20,000, $30,000 higher than asking price. So you're starting to see multiple offers again. You're starting to see the buyers in the market so I still think this is a neutral market, and we talk about this all the time. COVID-19 or not, real estate's 4 things, right? Location, price, features, and condition. And but yeah, we've lost a couple of transactions. Do the whole love letter thing and everything. And and these are first-time home buyers, teachers. cops and firemen and stuff like that. So,
Who I'm not bullish on, I am not bullish on, is the new development.
I would disagree with that. I represent a client. It depends on where they're at in the cycle. Right. We represent a client that we're doing a 325 unit project.
And has that been delayed?
It has not been delayed.
Wow.
Matter of fact, quite the opposite.
Because I'm hearing properties that we're following closely in the heart of Charlottesville being delayed to the fall from a summer grand opening.
Yeah, so it depends on where you're in the cycle, right? So
Yeah.
this particular thing, it's already started. This particular case has a roundabout that's getting built, so it's already been in the works. And from today until the point that actual construction can start is probably 1 to 2 years, right? So it depends on where you're in this pipeline in it. I think the question more is what the good doctor said is some of the jurisdictions, and they're figuring this out, are not accepting applications, right?
Right.
So Charlottesville being one of them. But
Yeah.
they're on the way of trying to fix it.
Okay.
At least that's the information.
Certainly
I
hope
have.
so.
Yeah, they will. They're just trying to figure out. This is all new reality to them.
And a conversation, my friend, that's worth having. You have a lot of folks watching. In fact, four former presidents, CEOs or presidents of CAR.
It'll be presidents.
Okay, 4 former presidents of CAR are currently watching you.
There's also CEOs too, but
Okay, these are the Guthries were the presidents, right? Arlene's the
yeah,
presidents.
sure.
Okay, watching here. I'm curious of your thoughts.
you're going to get me into trouble. I can have feeling this already.
I learned from you.
Okay.
Okay, this is what I'm learning from you. Okay, so city and Albemarle County and City of Charlottesville are both expecting budgetary shortfalls
Sure.
because business was put on hold and still is.
Sure.
We know why. Mm-hmm. How do you think that is going to impact assessments and real estate taxes? And then the follow-up question is, what impact does that have on the marketplace?
So I'm going to try not to answer that question.
Okay, because that's something worth following.
Yeah, so I'm following it closely, and so I'm having conversations with folks like Ned Galloway, and they're looking at
Your friends.
Well, yeah, correct. I think they're my friends. Hopefully, they feel the same way back to me. But look, so the reality of it is, I can just speak from a nonprofit perspective, right? Just to talk about a little bit how these local jurisdictions have impacted that and impacted what my passions are, other than helping folks with the Regional Housing Partnership, the commissions, and we're projecting that we're not going to be able to receive much of any money from the local jurisdictions, because frankly, they need to use the capital they have for essential services.
Exactly.
Right.
Charlottesville's projecting an 8 million shortfall,
Sure.
so they need to keep the city's lights on
Sure.
before they can start giving gifts out, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so the good news is, these organizations that I'm part of, we're pivoting, right? And we're pivoting to the private sector, and we're trying to raise capital. So for instance, the land trust that I sit on, that I chair, we have the opportunity to build 12 new units like we did on Nassau in Charlottesville, but we can't get the capital from the city,
right.
So we're pivoting. If anybody's watching, we'll be more
Give
than
us
happy.
some money.
We're pivoting. Well, we're running it like a business. We're adapting. We're overcoming. What ways we can go and do this? Well, we have assets.
You're surviving.
We have assets
Yeah.
because I've been on nonstop Zoom meetings all week long, and every one of the conversations and every one of these organizations is exactly what the good doctor just said. Maybe it's the third quarter, maybe it's the fourth quarter, maybe it's the first quarter of 2021.
I hope it's Q3, baby.
But the reality it is, the affordability index is going to go through the roof. And now is the time to get these projects for affordable housing and rolling. The struggle is the governments are trying to figure out how to provide essential services.
So are you predicting? Did you give a, you handled that question extremely well, my
I tried
friend.
to dance
You
around
did
that.
it so well. I almost forgot to follow up. I almost did. All right, I will forget.
I do dabble in politics.
I see you're very good at it. Oh, Smith, I enjoy you so much. I'm curious. I'm following that closely, Keith.
Yeah. Okay. Did I not answer that question
I think
correctly?
you answered it pretty well. I think you answered it pretty well. Michael Guthrie is watching on your program. He says, don't forget, guys, starter homes could be 100% financed for first-time buyers. That's a good point, and that's a counter-argument to me seeing that starter home or the level right above it may be a little hurt with all these people unemployed and people lacking some capital. This is what I'm most concerned about. Okay, go ahead.
So Michael will know this better than anybody. We're just not seeing the slowdown on it. No,
Your business.
Well, correct. I think Roy Wheeler's too. And just a bit of a shout out to Michael. Lisa's going to be on Michael's radio show tomorrow morning. I believe it's at 10 o'clock.
Nice.
So you're going to get a double dose of Lisa. So
Love it. I absolutely love it. So you're not seeing a slowdown?
Our business, Yonna and I's business is not.
Good for you.
But, that might just be luck. I don't. We're fortunate, very fortunate to be busy. Maybe it's what you're doing for us.
Possibly so. Yeah. My friend, I'm curious, and a lot of your colleagues watching, I'm curious of how this is going to impact the wealth gap in communities across the country. The middle and deeper pocketed have a longer burn rate to be able to withstand this.
That's a great question. Wish I knew the answer to it.
I think it's going to make the wealth gap larger. I really do. Are you following that?
I'm not, but I think my bandwidth's a little bit preoccupied at the moment with other stuff. But logically, I'm, if I put my affordability hat on, that scares the hell out of me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely scares the hell out of me too. Mm-hmm. We're going to follow that very closely here on Real Talk. Tuesday's guests you've teased already.
Yeah, actually, so Tuesday we're going to, Elizabeth Cromwell is going to come in.
Nice. They got a new program.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about their new program, which I volunteered for. Hopefully I get to sit on one of their committees. I love her to kind of get out there. It was really cutting edge information to do, and I apologize having mask day today. But yeah, I'm excited about that. And I'm trying to sweet talk my grandson to say hello to me.
Harry Jr.
Little Harry, yeah.
Little Harry, welcome to the program. We hope we make that happen on Tuesday.
We might have a banana or something together.
I would enjoy that. Yeah. A banana with
I'm
Harry.
Looking forward to it.
In Connecticut?
He's in North Connecticut.
Yeah. Why I know that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. We know each other a little bit too much. But, on the positive side, I have breakfast with them every morning.
Yeah.
I mean, how awesome is that?
I still think and we're positive guys, and I know you're itching to find the positive here because that's who you are, that's who I am. I still think it's a real estate show, it's a life show. Sure. I still think the folks that are watching, there's a positive here for people that are buying in Charlottesville and Central Virginia. Contact a trusted advisor like the Yes Team Realtors.
Or anybody who's watching.
This is, I'm going to say, it's a buyer's market.
Well, it's also
a buyer's market.
We just we're putting a couple of homes on the market, right? And you're going to help us with one of them.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. But people are out there looking. It's just different now, right? It's when I finish this show, I'm going to virtually show a house.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. So it's I specifically won't talk about the property, but the buyer, I'm going to FaceTime the house, and we're going to walk through it. And if it raises to their level, they're prepared to make an offer.
I love it.
So business is being done. It's just done differently, and everybody watching the show gets it. Everybody's trying to do it. Another shout out to Michael. They are and Vincent's on. They're adapting. Our company anyway is adapting very quickly to this, and my hat's off to them. Okay. It's a good show today. Scott Morris, hello. Joseph Gentile from Pearl Certification just logged in and shared the show on Long Island. Dr. John, the owner of Pro Renata, watching the program as we speak. We should catch up, and we'll close on this. We should catch up with one of the sponsors of the show, and Dairy Market and their team. Yeah, so I've actually spoke to Chris the other day, and somewhere in May, they're again talking about just moving forward. They're moving forward. They're building their apartment units. They're building their affordable housing component in it. He was mentioning that the Class A space is going to start moving in June or July, I believe, if I got it right. So he agreed to come on. So a little bit of arm twisting to kind of talk about. You're persuasive. A little bit, talking about that's just going to be a huge engine
Oh.
in the center of our city. So we're excited about
I
it.
can't wait. I cannot wait. Thank you guys for being a part of the show. Real Talk, powered by the Yes Team Realtors. We'll archive the show on the YesTeamRealtors.com. We'll archive it on ILoveCVille.com. We had Lisa Sturtevant, Dr. Lisa Sturtevant, the Chief Economist for the Virginia Realtors Association, on the program. I would encourage you to listen to the show from start to finish, either in its audio-visual form or its podcast form. She was dropping knowledge bombs.
I just got a text from her thanking us for this and excited to come back.
She was amazing.
Yeah.
She was amazing.
Well, it was a little flustered in the beginning, but that was my fault on the technology end of it.
It worked out just fine.
Cool.
Have a great weekend, guys. We will see you Tuesday at 10:15 on Real Talk, powered by the Yes Team Realtors. This? She texted? Yeah, she liked it. She was great. Okay, can do that. Yeah, we're off.